One time when I was chairman, just as a joke, they split the vote to adjourn, so I would have to.
Good evening, everybody. We will call to order the August 10th, 2016 meeting of Ascension Parish Zoning Commission. All members are present, and we have our staff person on board. Ms. Patrice, can you introduce yourself?
Patrice Johnson, Zoning Secretary.
All right, and we have Mr. Brock and Mr. Poche from the parish we introduced before. All right, we have item 3 on the agenda is a motion to accept the minutes of the June 8th, 2016 meeting. Do we have a motion on that?
Motion.
Mr. Dumas, second. Mr. Christie, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, item 4, chairman's comments. Chair has no comments tonight regarding zoning. Item number 5, public hearing to amend the Ascension Parish Development Code for recommendation for approval or denial to the Ascension Parish Council of Zoning Review IDPZ 1048.16, Lot G of the subdivision of Miss Alice A. Bro et al., property for Stephanie Smith. And do we have somebody here to speak on that tonight, or is this a staff matter?
No, someone put in an application.
Is anybody here to speak on the Stephanie Smith or Alice Bro property for Stephanie Smith? Council, what do we do with the?
It's up to you
Oh,
guys.
I'm sorry. Okay. Are the applicants here?
I represent
Okay. Yes,
Sure.
come forward, sir, please. Thank you. Please state your name for us.
Austin Lolan, and I represent the purchasers of the property. They are a family-owned and operated safety consulting company, and they would like to purchase this building and use it commercially for their company. There's only 5 people that work there, and it's family-owned, and that's what they're trying to do, use it as a family-owned company.
All right. Staff?
Yes, sir. Staff recommends to deny the MU2 as requested. It is not recommended to rezone property away from the intersection without the zoning district being continuous along the west side of LA 73.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this. People have signed up to speak. Patrice?
My name is James Kennison. We have some land adjoining one step over from this property and also one step behind it. We're not directly adjoining, but we want, excuse me, once removed. So, I'm married. My wife lived next door to the Bros. The Bros owned that property since 1920s and 1930s, and that's kind of beside the point. It's been sold, and so they want to do something else with it now. But if you look along Highway 73 in that section from Post Office Road and Alice Bro Road, going kind of south, it's all blue, which means all residential, until you get to across past St. John's Church. There's a little red section in there, which I think is Crawfish Aquatics, which is a new situation. But all the rest of them are residential areas. So this is the first, to my knowledge, commercial establishment to go in along there. So my question to you guys is really, how do you determine if you're going to hopscotch a residential area with a mixed-use corridor situation? You follow what I'm saying? Somewhere you got a mixed-use corridor designation and you got a residential designation. How do you satisfy that on the same road in the same area? So I'm not really against these people. I think it's probably be a good business. It's just it's a office building, which is not that undesirable. It could be a lot worse. So we're against selling it, but we're not against the people coming in to buy it, if that makes any sense.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm David Oob, been living in Prairieville for 72 years. I have the property right across Aliceboro Lane from this property that we're talking about. I've lived on that property, like I say, for 72 years, and my father has finally built a house right next to Aliceboro Lane. This area has always been residential, and it's bad enough that I have to look at a mechanic shop across the street. That's another story. But the thing is, and like James was saying, we're looking at this road, and all on that side of the road is residential. And what happens when you start taking out a little section like this to make it a higher use rather than residential? And what happens next year or year after when you start blocking these little sections out, and people like us that plan to be there our entire lives are going to get pushed out? I mean, to us, this is like a subdivision, because we're the people that helped build this parish living in this area. And I'm not necessarily, like Jane, I'm not necessarily against this particular business, but what happens if it's sold next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? And as I look at the things that it can now be used for, you know, in the future, or this deal that he's planning falls through, now what have we opened up? And that's our concern. We've lived here all our lives. I mean, it'd be just like if you went into a subdivision, the main street of the subdivision, and went 4 or 5 houses down and said, we're going to cut out a section here and make this commercial. That's not fair to them, it's not fair to us. And like I said, we voted on the parish map, the zoning plan, way back when it was developed. I was one of 3 people in the area that went to the public hearing. Well, I didn't see any of these other people that want to change it at this time. We voted on it as it was. Please, take the word of the people and let's not change it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this. I have a question for staff. Across the street in Post Office Road, from Post Office Road going north to Airline, that's, what's that designation?
That designation is mixed use too.
Because there's a lot of, I mean, there's a mechanic shop, as Mr. Oob noted, on Post Office Road, and there's something just north of that going towards some building that was built not too long ago. I don't know what it is, but it's not
It's a daycare.
daycare.
Yes, sir. And
And
the mechanic shop was there prior to zoning. So
That's grandfathered
that's
in.
grandfathered in. That use is not, wouldn't be permitted in mixed use.
What's was the original zoning plan, because there's a lot of mixed use too, on both sides of 73, but on the, I guess, the east side, it goes all the way down to Post Office Road. On the west side, it stops well before this
Correct.
property. Was that the original plan that was drawn up, or is that,
When
has
mi-
it slowly added in
No.
mixed use too over the years?
Sure. When mixed use two was established, because at the beginning we didn't have mixed use two from when zoning was implemented. When mixed use two was established, then we went through and they had some existing buildings on that, or businesses on that side. So we did, put them as mixed use two. On the west side, we basically stopped where there's residences, and that's where we stopped the mixed use two.
There was, I worked on that plan with Lance and staff back then, and the rationale was, he said, well, we're not gonna create a non-conforming use for an existing residential area. We also did not want to cut across a piece of property. We wanted to follow property lines. So we're not gonna take just a front parcel of a land and split the zoning. So there was a rationale behind it. That's how those boundaries were established.
Correct.
And if we grant this, you would have, the OOBs would basically be sandwiched between two mixed-use parcels as residential, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Yeah, and just to clear up for you, all you're doing tonight is
The
voting.
recommendation to the council to approve it or not, yeah,
Yes.
right. We-
I mean, I can see the, you know, if we recommended approval on this, you're basically making a lot of mixed use two, really where there's, I mean, the closest mixed use two is either across the street and north, or across the street and down Post Office Road some. So, I mean, I don't know that it necessarily meets the definition of spot zoning, but it sure starts to look that way. But the other concern I have, I mean, and anybody who's driven up and down Highway 73 knows, I mean, there's businesses all up and maybe, I don't think there's any in that area, but, I mean, you don't have to go too far south to run into some commercial businesses, including a bar, I think, is out there, and some commercial office buildings, so.
But wasn't a lot of that grandfathered?
No.
And it's much further south, though, than where this
Yeah,
parcel
it gets,
is.
It's
it
all
gets
further
towards the
south.
interstate,
South and
for
then
sure.
Okay.
You know, you leave that kind of salt and peppered area of 73, and then you enter the residential area, and then you, as you get up here, you know, this tends to be more concentrated, and let's spread around. You know, technically, this would not be spot zoning on definition because catty corner to it is mixed use too. But
No, I
but
don't
if-
think it,
you know,
I didn't think it, I wouldn't call it spot zoning for that reason, but when you look at the map, it's, you know, other than across the street, other than that catty corner thing, especially on the east side of, or the west side of 73, I mean, it's an island of mixed use too,
Right.
in amongst a bunch of other residential, medium residential.
What is the current use of that building?
It's a residence.
They're actually occupying it?
It's for sale. I don't know if anyone's actually in the home now.
Is the plan to tear down that building and build a new office on that?
Yes, sir, it's to preserve it. The family that's buying it is a family-owned safety company, and they preserve multiple homes of four, including 100-year-old homes. They want to preserve it and just make it a little more pretty, commercialized, and there's only about 5 people working in the actual office. So they will not be tearing it down.
So what you're saying is if they moved in illegally and started operating a business, nobody would ever know it's a business unless you went there.
Certainly, you're not suggesting that, right?
I'm not suggesting that, but you're making it sound like they're just gonna operate out of that home, but it's really not gonna increase traffic. It's not gonna be a commercial building, an office-type building, or anything of that nature.
Right, they're just a consulting firm for safety for oil field and whatnot, so they're more of the inside office computer people.
But if this is granted, you can't place any contingencies on the property that it only be used that way. So once it's granted, anybody who wants to come back later and purchase that piece of property can do anything on it that complies with that zoning, right?
That is correct.
Yep.
Well, contrary to some other opinions tonight, in all my years of planning experience, this is a perfect example of spot zoning. Disagree.
Any other questions from the commission? Do we have a motion?
Motion to deny, recommend denial.
Motion to recommend denial by Mr. Chasson. Second by Mr. Foster. All in favor?
I,
Any in opposition? The recommendation, or our recommendation to the council will be to deny the zoning change. So, that doesn't mean that you lost, because the council could still overturn as they did the last time we did that, so, but that's our recommendation. Staff report?
No report, sir.
All right. Item number 7, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.